Looking for a place where faith breaks boundaries? Welcome to BIFR, Bullet in Flight Radio, an inclusive, progressive community of Christ followers, sharing real stories and bold ideas. This is your radio for hope, growth, and daring faith. Your story, our station. Tune in for new episodes every Friday and join believers who refuse to stay small. Visit https://www.just-dominic.com to listen and become part of the flight.
Hello everybody, this is Dr. Phoenicia Mwepo
and Larry Mwepo,
and you're listening to Bullet in Flight Radio, your story, our station.
The best progressive Christian network in the world.
Hi guys, welcome to another Monday night live stream. Last week we started with Genesis. I want to go over the first 10 chapters or so of Genesis, the pre-flood and early post-flood history. And so we just got up to the fourth day. And that was kind of interesting because the whole idea of the sun, moon, and stars being created, and that's when we first begin our calendar. So we're going to finish that today, finish chapter 1, and look at some other things. And then it'll get interesting when we get into chapters 3 and 4 and 5 and look at some of the other stories of what exactly happened in that 1600-year time frame. So let's go ahead and look at this. So we'll go back to Genesis. And again, we did the first 16 verses, I think. So let's start over a little bit with verse 14. Verse 14 says, "And God said," this was after the third day. So we did the first day, second day, third day. And then it says, God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs, for seasons, for days, and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth." And it was so. So you've got the stars out there, but they don't really give much of any light. They're pretty to look at. But nighttime traveling is safer when you have a full moon. Now, we don't care that much anymore because all the streets are lit up. But back in the day when there were no electric lights, this was really important. And then the sun in the daytime. So the two great lights, the sun and the moon. And we mentioned that some of the people actually laugh at this because they say the sun is a light. It gives off its own light. The moon is not a light. It's a reflector. And so they thought it was. It just shows that they made up stuff. And we were talking about in the Hebrew, the word here for light is not or, which is the normal word for a light, like a candle flame, or the sun that gives off its own light. But it's meor, which is a light holder, or something that's either a light or a reflection. So a light or a light bulb or a mirror, either one. So again, they would not have known the difference or to use that particular language. So it goes on to just kind of explain how this stuff is divinely inspired. Anyway, so the firmament, the two great lights, to give light on the earth. And then it says in verse 18, "And to rule over the day and to rule over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good." This was the evening and the morning of the fourth day. And we kind of stopped, and we'll go back and look at it again when we get to the other stuff. But we've got other texts that we're going to be looking at. Jasher, Josephus, Jubilees, Seder Olam, some of the other texts that tell us about those things. So that's the fourth day. So that's when the sun, moon, and stars were created. According to the Essenes, they start their calendar on a Wednesday, fourth day of the week, because that's when the sun and moon was created. So you can see the whole concept that they're talking about is the creation of the sun, moon, and stars in its current form is on that fourth day. And we mentioned Josephus, and several other people had mentioned that this is a literal 24-hour day. So verse 20 says, "And God said, let the waters bring forth abundantly, and moving creature, the moving creature that has life, the fowl that it may fly above the earth in the open firmament of the heaven. So again, the previous days he created the firmament, which is the atmosphere of the planet between the water canopy and the waters that were under the atmosphere. And then dry land appeared, and then the plants, and then the animals. So in this case, they're creating the fish and then the birds. God created the great whales and every living creature that moves, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after its kind, and God saw that it was good. So birds and marine life. So verse 22 says, and God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply and fill the waters of the seas, and let the fowl multiply on the earth. So again, this is that same concept. He created a form, gave that form the ability to reproduce after its own kind. So no evolution, no macro or anything like that, just the ability to reproduce. Everybody always used to have that old joke, which came first, the chicken or the egg? And the answer was, if you said the chicken, they would say, well, you had to have an egg to lay the chicken. You'd say, okay, well, then the egg came first. No, because you had to have a chicken to lay the egg. And they just kind of as a joke would go back and forth. I remember somebody asked me that one time, and I said chicken, and they said, well, you got to have an egg to lay the chicken. And I said, no, God created the forms in their present form, then gave them the ability to reproduce, according to Genesis. They just looked at me like, yeah, you ruined the joke. But that's the answer. Not just for marine life and the birds, but also everything else. So verse 24, it says, God said, let the earth bring forth the living creature after its kind, cattle, the creeping thing, the beasts of the earth after its kind, and it was so. And I always thought here, when it said creeping thing, I always thought of bugs. But a lot of translations would say that that is actually reptiles. So that kind of makes sense. So cattle, which would be land animals, not just bovine, cows and that kind of stuff, but any kind of thing like that. So deer, buffalo, any kind of land animal. And then creeping thing would be reptiles, any kind of reptile. And the beasts of the earth after its kind. And it was so. And some people will always also mention this as cattle can be the domesticated form, and the beasts or be the wild beasts. So anyway, in any case, at this point in this day, he created all land animals. So I would assume bugs, would be in there also. So then verse 25 says, he made the beast of the earth after its kind, and the cattle after their kind, and every creeping thing, everything that creeps upon the earth after its kind. And God saw that it was good. And God said, let us make man in our own image and after our likeness, and he let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. So this is interesting because a lot of people will look at this and say, God said. Now, if we go to our Hebrew, the word for God down here is Elohim. And what's interesting to me is I've always thought, couldn't really prove this, but I've always thought Elohim is a word meaning the Trinity. So because El is God, Eloah is a feminine form, well, actually not feminine, but it's a different form of El. And anytime you add im on the end, it's actually masculine plural. And you have singular, dual, and plural in Hebrew. So like a pair of eyes. So in this case, it's 3 L's, or 3 Eloah in the Godhead. So I've always thought of it that way, but never really proved it, because in other places it seems like you could use this as foreign gods, plural, or as angels, plural. So it can be used in different ways. But that doesn't mean a whole lot, because if you say, well, I worship a god, well, is it the real God or is it a fake God? And we'd still use the word God. So it doesn't really matter that it can be used for pagan gods or servants of gods, which would be angels, or fallen servants of gods, which would be fallen angels. But anyway, just to let you know this was kind of interesting. Now, I couldn't really say anything about that because no way to actually prove it. But as we'll see to it, we're going through the New Testament in Hebrew from the early times. And in the Gospel of John, it really defines that in that way, where our text says, in the beginning was God, or in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. It says it a little differently. It said, in the beginning was the Son of God, instead of the Word. And he was an Eloah, or he was with El meaning the Father, the main God. And then he was Elohim. And then later on in the text, it says in two different places in chapter 1, kind of defines Elohim. So putting all that together, it's really interesting to see how that works. Anyway, I bring that out because a lot of Jewish people would say, let us make man in our image. Well, that's God and the angels. Well, it's not saying I'm going to make man in our image, meaning he's going to have the same image as God and or the angels. He says, let us, plural, make man. Angels do not create. They can possibly procreate if they fall. That's Genesis 6. We'll get to the Nephilim stuff later. But they don't just create. The only creator being is God. Now we can make things, and there's two different words for that in Hebrew. Bara is to create, which is to create something out of thin air, just it's there. Asa means to make something. So I put some chocolate, I put some cream, I put some eggs in there, and I put some other stuff, and I make a really nice ice cream. I make it out of other things. So, but I don't create ice cream. I make ice cream. So it's really interesting to see this. So this is actually saying God. And this is the same as in any text, even the Masoretic text, the people that reject the Trinity still have this in their text. So God says, let us make man in our image and in our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, the fowl of the air, the cattle, and over all the earth, and every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. So this is not saying anything other than we have dominion or authority. That's another way of saying authority. I remember one of the hyper word faith people saying that you have dominion, and to have dominion means you have to be able to do everything they can do, or you can't have dominion over them. And he made the comment that birds fly, which means Adam could fly. You know, really crazy stuff these guys come up with, and it means nothing like that. It simply means that you have authority over them. If you want to kill and eat them, if you want to try to domesticate them, if you want to push them over a certain way and have a place just for humans, or whatever you want to do, it's your kingdom. You're the highest life form on the planet. And that's what it's talking about here. So that's what he planned to do. So in verse 27, it says, God, this be Elohim again, created man in his own image, and in the image of God he created him. Male and female, he created them. So this is a creation of Adam and Eve at this point. And a lot of people get confused, especially today with the gender fluidity stuff. In the language in Hebrew, you have man, which means mankind. Mankind is divided into two different kinds. There's man and there's woman. And it's just like before when we were looking at the day. A day, like the 7 days of creation, those are 7 24-hour days. But the 24-hour day is divided into a day and a night. So that seems kind of confusing, but that's just the way it is. I was talking with this in our Bible study on Tuesday nights. We have a guy that comes to our Bible study that is Turkish, came from Turkey, migrated into to America. Anyway, and he was saying actually in Turkish, they are two different words, the 24-hour day and then the 12-hour day and 12-hour night. Somehow he didn't tell me what they were, but so some languages would be different that way. But in the same way that there's that, God created man in his own image. He created mankind, both male and female. That was the design. No other pieces, no other 56 different genders. But God blessed them, and he said to them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. This is one of those verses that's interesting. This particular word means to fill or to refill, either way. And so that again gets us back to, we talked about Genesis 1:1 and 1:2, about it possibly being translated was or became. And if it's became, that means there was a pre-Adamic world. This place here, if it's actually replenish, there would have to be a pre-Adamic world, because you're filling something again that was filled before. But again, in Hebrew, let's see what it says here. So we'll go down here. And said to them, be fruitful, multiply, and replenish. And the word is mala. And if we look this up, it's going to tell us it's translated to fill, or to full, make something full, or to fulfill, consecrate, accomplish, replenish, okay, to be wholly, set, fully, gathered, overflow, or satisfied. So basically it just means to be full or to be filled in one way or the other. So filled or refilled, either one. So in other words, you can't really use this to prove there was or was not a pre-Adamic world. And you'll see that as we go through a lot of the other stuff too. It's the same kind of a deal. There may have been, but there's no direct evidence. Anyway, so God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it. Have dominion over the fish of the sea, the fowl of the air, and over everything that moves upon the earth. And God said, behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed which is upon the face of the earth, and every tree in which is the fruit of the tree yielding seed, and to you it shall be for meat, or for food. So this is the verse where a lot of people get the idea that we didn't eat meat pre-flood. And that may or may not be true just by looking at this text. But all the different fruit trees, all the different nutrients, food that's created. I have had people that use drugs try to use this scripture to say every possible plant that there is, which would mean marijuana, cocaine, all this other kind of stuff, is our food, or what we should be using, that kind of thing. And I would point out to them that there's also plants that are deadly poison. So this doesn't mean that anything out there that's green that you eat. You have to eat the non-poisonous food, the non-narcotic food, the real food. So that's obvious, but I mean, still, it's interesting to see people try to twist those kind of things. So anyway, so for food, all the fruit trees and all the fruits and vegetables and those things. And it says, to every beast of the earth and to every fowl of the air and to everything that creeps upon the earth wherein there is life, he has given every green herb for meat, and it was so. And God saw that everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And this was the evening and the morning of the sixth day. So, let's see here. So again, putting those together, though, there is these two verses, not just one verse, but these two verses. The fact that all the animals or all the people are supposed to eat vegetables, so vegetarian type thing. And then, but this also says everything that creeps upon the earth, so the reptiles, the fowls, and the land animals, and probably the fish also, eat the green herb for food. So putting all that together, it does make a strong point for the idea of vegetarianism pre-flood. Okay, let's take a look. We're going to stop there officially for this, but let's go ahead and take a look at the first couple of things in Genesis 2, and then we'll go to some commentary. But it says, thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. So you've got 6 days of creation. Everything is finished. He creates the light, the atmosphere, the land, the vegetation, the marine life, the birds, the land life, and then finally man, and makes man caretaker of the planet, and gives them all herbs or plants to eat. So thus it was finished, and all the host of them. On the 7th day, so that's the first 6. So our week, according to the Essene calendar, is designed after this. So the first day of the week is Sunday. So that would have been the creation of light. Going all the way down to Friday, Adam would have been, Friday is the 6th. So on the 6th day, man was created. So on the 7th day, this would be Saturday. On the 7th day, then, he rested from all the work that he had made, rested on the 7th day from all the work which he had made. God blessed the 7th day and sanctified it, because in it he rested from all his work which he had created and made. And then it goes on and talks about the other stuff. So this is interesting. A lot of people use this to say that the Sabbath day is incumbent on Gentiles, and therefore we have to keep the rituals, all that kind of stuff. We talked about this a little bit last week. The whole concept of, and you can go back and look at it, we quoted Josephus that kind of broke this up into 2 pieces. Every nation does keep the Sabbath, and the fact that we have a 7-day cycle, and each 1 day out of 7 we rest, which is what this is commanded that we do. But none of them, except the Jews, have rituals that they do on the Sabbath. And of course, I mentioned, the standard way of working, it came to be in the United States, is Saturday and Sunday. So the 7th day and the first day of the week is kind of, you take off. And it's interesting too, because in the ancient times, people try to say that we changed the Sabbath to Sunday. And so we didn't. The Sabbath was Saturday. And it's always the day that you, if you're Jewish, would go to the temple or to the synagogue, and you would do rituals. Sunday, you would always go to your rabbi, if you had a rabbi, if you're religious, and do in-depth studies. And if you look at this, especially if you look at the calendar, you'll see all the times where Jesus was teaching the apostles, it was always on a Sunday. And we can demonstrate that fairly easy. Resurrection, after the resurrection, the times that he appeared to them were all on Sundays, first day of the week. So lots of interesting things in that. So I'm not saying don't do rituals. I'm saying you do not have to do the rituals. And if you're going to do the rituals properly, it's going to be difficult to do. So like I mentioned, the lighting the Shabbat candles has to be done by the oldest woman in the household. So if I'm a single guy that went off to college, and I'm living in a dorm of guys, it's not possible for me to keep the Sabbath unless I go to somebody's house, and then of course I'm not actually doing it. I'm participating, I'm observing. So same kind of a thing, but it is important that we understand it. So the whole concept, what we'll see later on in the calendar, the whole concept is the 7th day of rest means that there would be 6,000 years of man's history, and there would be a millennial reign, a day of rest. And that's the basic teaching. All of the festivals teach prophecy. And so sometimes it's a trick of Satan to get us off on, you're not doing it right. You have to do it here or do it there, or not do it or whatever. And the most important thing is, why would we do it to begin with? If we did it, what is the point? Well, it teaches prophecy. Well, what prophecy is this teaching? That's the only thing that really matters. Do you understand what's being communicated? So if you don't understand what's being communicated, then you can't really understand anything. It's much like the kosher food. In Barnabas, it talks about the reason the kosher food was created is because some of the foods that are unkosher had direct connotations to either paganism or other things. And it was a teaching thing. In the Law of Kings, it actually says that pork is good food, but Jews do not eat pork. So there's a reason that pigs represent something, and that's the reason why you don't eat them. So a lot of things like that. You need to understand why these things. Why would you not do this, or why would you have to do this? There's a reason for it, and it's more important to understand the reason than just following directions. Sometimes you need to do both, but always, 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 we need to understand why those things are going on. Okay, so we'll stop there. Let me go over to, this is Jubilees. We're going to read kind of the same thing. And of course, this was found, this is the Ethiopic version. Parts of it were found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. So we'll start over with the fourth day. And the fourth day, he created the sun, moon, and stars, set them in the firmament of heaven to give light upon the whole earth, and to rule over the day and the night, to divide the light from the darkness. And God appointed the sun to be a great sign on the earth. Now, it's interesting here, he created sun, moon, and stars, but he's saying here, just like in the Book of Enoch, that the sun is the main one. He created the sun to be a great sign on the earth for Sabbaths. So you can't really look at moon cycles alone and figure out Sabbaths. But you can a sun, 24-hour days, you can do that. So for Sabbaths and for months, so weeks, months, feasts, because you calculate the feast on a certain day of the month. Passover is always the 14th of Nisan. So if you know when it starts, you'll be able to calculate when it is based on the sun. And for years, so at the end of each year, you have a new year that starts. And of course, that's at the spring equinox on this calendar. And for Sabbaths of years, so this tomb here, Sabbath, of course, just means a week. It also means rest, but it can mean a week. So a set of 7 of something. Sabbath years, Sabbath days. In this case, it's Sabbaths of years. So we're talking about Shemitahs. That's another way of saying it. So for Shemitahs, and then for Jubilees, and for all the seasons of the years. So again, the calendar has a day, 24-hour day, 364 days in a year, and every 5 to 6 years there's a leap week to keep it in sync with the spring equinox, which is the first day of the year. And then you count 7 sets of years, which would be a Shemitah, and then there's 7 sets of Shemitahs, which would be 49 years total, and then a Jubilee year. And then 2 Jubilees, to plug it into our calendar system, would be a century. 50 years plus 50 years is a century. But they would go forward and look at Jubilees. As soon as you get to be 10 Jubilees, that's 500 years. At that point, it begins a new Ona. And there's 12 of those throughout all the 7,000 years. There's also ages, but it's interesting to kind of see that. So the concept is being God is creating things. He's giving us a Sabbath for rest. Later on, he's going to give the Jews rituals that work on the seasons, the Jubilees, the Shemitahs, the high holy days that teach prophecy. And again, whether you observe them or not, just make sure you understand what they are. Observing them is a great way to do it. So I would encourage you to go to a Messianic synagogue on the festivals and just watch, be a part of it. You can't conduct your own. Technically, that would be against the law of Moses because you're a Gentile. And you would not want to convert to Judaism because that would be rejecting Messiah. So you would want to go forward with that. But a Messianic synagogue, you could go and observe and learn. It's very, very important. And he divided the light from the darkness, and for prosperity, and all the things that prosper which shoot out of the ground, shoot and grow out of the earth. These 3 kinds he created on the 4th day. And then we see the same thing on the 5th day. He created great sea monsters. And these would be very, very large creatures. A lot of people translate them whales, but we're probably talking about Leviathan. The word here, I believe, is Tanin, which would be great sea serpents. In the depths of the waters, for these were the first things of flesh that were created by his hands, the fish and everything that moves in the waters, and everything that flies, the birds and all their kind. And the sun rose above them to prosper them, and above everything that was on the earth, and everything that shoots out of the earth, the fruit-bearing trees, and all flesh. These things he created on the 5th day. Then we get to the 6th day, In the sixth day, it says, and on the sixth day, he created the animals of the earth, all the cattle, and everything that moves on the earth. And after all this, he created man. And he created a man and a woman. He created them and gave him dominion, him, the man, dominion over all that is on the earth and the seas, and over everything that flies, and over the beasts, and over the cattle, and over everything that moves on the earth, and over the whole earth, and over all this he gave him dominion. So again, mankind has dominion over the animals. These four kinds he created on the sixth day, and there were altogether 22 kinds, 22 different kinds of things he created. And he finished all the work on the sixth day, and all the heavens and the earth and the seas and the abysses and the light and the darkness and everything. I would make one comment here. Let's see here. Yeah, so mankind has dominion over all the animals, meaning land animals, fish, reptiles, everything on the earth. And so we have a problem in the United States. We have I think it's the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, which will set aside land, take land away from people, farmers, to protect a certain subspecies. So like the stub-nosed turtle, is beginning to go extinct. So they want to set aside some land so it can survive. And so the whole idea is that each one of these subspecies are a new evolution. It's its own creation and deserves protection even if it hurts man in some way. If you believe the Bible, though, on the other hand, what we're seeing is that God created turtles, for instance. And as everything's spread out, you have certain groups of turtles that are by themselves that keep reproducing in the limited gene pool that they have, and they develop these abnormalities. So like the stub-nosed turtle becomes its own thing. So it didn't evolve on its own. It's simply a type of turtle that, because of inbreeding, has been deformed. So if you think about it, in that case, we should not try to protect a stub-nosed turtle because it shouldn't actually exist to begin with. Turtles should exist, but not subspecies. And so that's the kind of thing that happens here in Kansas. I live in Kansas. A decade or so back, they tried to do the same thing. There was a certain kind of waterfowl, and they were going to take thousands of acres away from farmers. And our attorney general got in there and said, no, this is by definition this, and he was able to overthrow it. So it's an interesting way to look at it. I first learned about this through Hillsdale College. It's a great conservative college. It's expensive. They actually have free courses on the Constitution and other things too that you as a person can download and look at, and videos and stuff. But I forget the terms, but most people now that believe in evolution are focusing on animals, and people that believe in creation are focusing on human beings. And you can kind of understand the subset like that. So if there's a group of people that went and, well, like for instance, give an example of one. In Africa, there was the ostrich people, and small group consistently inbreeding. Instead of having the proper toes, 5 toes pointing that way, they actually developed something like that, almost like a monkey. Only they couldn't use it that way because humans aren't designed to do that. So they had this on their feet, and it was very difficult for them to maneuver. One of the things that they noticed, it was a big deal when they were discovered back in the 20s or 50s or somewhere. But now they almost don't exist, because as soon as one of them takes a wife or a husband from another tribe and then has children, they're back to normal. It fixes that genetic problem. So it would be insane, if you think about it, for us to say we need to keep the ostrich people with deformed feet because they're their own evolutionary development. It's like, no, you need to fix the problem or just let them be. So you don't hurt other people because of something like that. Anyway, that's an example. So there's lots of examples like that. So, okay, Sabbath. He gave us a great sign, the Sabbath day, that we should work 6 days, but keep the Sabbath on the seventh day from all work. Now, again, this is the Book of Jubilees. It's written about Jews, to Jews, and so they're talking about Mosaic law. So according to the Jewish law, they're supposed to take the day off, they're supposed to rest, and then they also do rituals. It says, and the angels of the presence and all the angels of sanctification, these two great classes, he has hidden us to keep the Sabbath with him and in heaven on an earth. And he said to us, behold, I will separate unto myself a people from among all peoples that will keep the Sabbath day, and I will sanctify them to myself as my people, and I will bless them, and as I have sanctified the Sabbath day to sanctify it unto myself, even so I will bless them, and they will be my people, and I will be their God. So this is the development of the Jewish nation. And I have chosen of the seed of Jacob from amongst all that I have seen, and I have written him down as my firstborn son. I have sanctified him to myself forever. This doesn't mean that he's saved or anything like that. I believe he is. But sanctified in the sense set apart. He's going to create a new thing, a special nation, which the Messiah will come from. And he's going to do that with the seed of Jacob. I have sanctified him to myself forever and ever, and I will teach them, the descendants of Jacob, the Sabbath day, that they may keep my Sabbath thereon from all work. Thus he created therein a sign in accordance with they should keep the Sabbath with us, so that would be God and the angels, on the seventh day to eat and drink and to bless him who has created all things. And he has blessed and sanctified unto himself a peculiar people, above all peoples, and they should keep the Sabbath together with us. And he caused his commands to ascend as a sweet savor, acceptable before him all the days. So this is talking about, and that doesn't mean that you can't keep the Sabbath, but it should be focused on the Lord. When some of the first colonies came to America, they had outlawed Christmas because it was mainly a Roman Catholic practice, at least the way they kept Christmas. And so they said either work or whatever. And some of the people said, but we want to take the day off to, observe the Lord. It's part of our conscience. So that would be perfectly fine. So I think it was William Bradford said, okay, fine, we'll have that set aside. But then Christmas Day comes and he notices they're out playing ball, they're out drinking, they're doing other things. That's not focusing on the Lord. And he basically said, if you're going to do that, you might as well be at work. So they outlawed that for a time. So the same thing applies here. If you're going to observe a Sabbath, it should be to focus on the Lord, to do those things, to not be busy working or doing other things. So let's go through here. It says, there were 22 generations of mankind from Adam to Jacob, 22 kinds of work that were made unto the seventh day. And it's blessed and holy, and the former also is blessed and holy, the one who serves with the one for sanctification and blessing. So that's kind of interesting, the fact that there's 22 generations from Adam to Jacob, and there were 22 different kinds of things he created. Could be a coincidence, but it's interesting to look at. And it says here, and to Jacob and his seed was granted that they should always be blessed and holy ones of the first testimony and law. And or even as he has sanctified and blessed the Sabbath day on the Sabbath day. He created heaven and earth and everything that was created on the 6 days. God made the seventh day holy for all of his works. Therefore he commanded on its behalf that whoever does any work therein shall die, and he who defiles it shall surely die. Therefore you who command your children, the children of Israel, to observe this day, and that they keep it holy and do not work thereupon, not to defile it. It is holier than the other days. Whoever profanes the Sabbath will surely die, and whoever does thereupon any work on it shall die eternally. The children of Israel may observe this day throughout their generations. Now notice what it's saying here. Specifically, the children of Israel may observe this day throughout their generations and not be rooted out of the land, for it is a holy day blessed. Everyone who observes and keeps the Sabbath thereon from all of his work will be holy and blessed throughout all the days unto us. Declare and say to the children of Israel the law of this day, both that they should keep the Sabbath thereon, and that they should not forsake it as an error in their hearts, and it should not be, or that it is not lawful to do any work thereon, which is unseemly. Now, that's interesting too. It's not lawful to do any work which is unseemly or not proper. It's interesting that some of the Jews today won't cook, for instance, or do certain things because it's considered work. To do their pleasure, that they should not prepare on anything to be eaten or drunk, and it is not lawful to draw water, and to bring or take out of their gates any burden. They should not prepare themselves on the sixth day. For themselves on the sixth day in their dwellings. So the basic idea is on the Friday, the Sabbath, you prepare everything for the Friday night meal, and then Saturday, so the leftovers, the breakfast, whatever, prepared before. You'll not bring in or take out from the house on that day, for that day is more holy and blessed than any jubilee or day of jubilees. On this we keep the Sabbath in the heavens that are made of any flesh, and the Sabbath on the earth. Let's see, it actually says here, okay, and the creator of all things blessed that day, and he had created for a blessing and for sanctification the glory above all days. This law and testimony we have seen the children of Israel as a law unto all of their generations. In here somewhere, it talks, and we'll get, this is actually chapter 2 of Genesis, so we'll get into that next time. But it'll actually make mention that the children of Israel alone are the ones that were allowed to observe the Sabbath. Very, very interesting in concept. So that's that one, and I think that's the same. Yeah, so this one actually starts in chapter 2 also. Okay, so that's it for today then. So next time we will start in Genesis 2 and go over. Now, some people say Genesis 2 are a different story of creation, and it's basically the Hebrew way of defining things. Like we could take a chapter and say, God created the heavens and the earth, and then there were kids, and there was a Cain and Abel, and there was this and that, and this is how we get to here. And then in chapter 2, start back over and give great detail. And that's what's going on here. So Moses wrote this. People try to say Moses didn't write it. Jesus said that Moses wrote. So we have it on the authority of the Messiah that Moses wrote this. Now you could say it's been edited maybe throughout the centuries, polished up at least. But you have to acknowledge that Moses wrote that. In the last days, we're supposed to have scoffers that scoff at everything. So we'll go ahead and stop there for tonight. And let's see here. I will go over to the chat room and see if there are any questions. Looks like we have a few. Have you heard of any of these people on YouTube or on YouTube sites claiming that the flood actually happened in the fall? If so, what is their basic? What are the basic basis for their conclusion? Thank you. It's Excuse me. According to Genesis, it took place on the 17th of the second month. And on the Dead Sea Scroll calendar, let me see if I can find that here real quick. And let me back up from here. Oh, actually, let's go here. So if we go to our Dead Sea Scroll calendar, this is the first, the spring equinox, and this is the first full day of spring on the calendar, always on a Wednesday. You get Passover, first fruits. On the second month, which is Iyar, mid-spring, which is the 17th of the second month, it's always on a Sunday. Go with Sundays again. This is the date of the flood. But what's going to happen is later on in time, when the calendar gets corrupted, they flipped New Year's from the spring to the fall. So if we do that, is actually flip it 6 months, we'll get up here and then we'll get into Heshvan. See, so Tishrei is the 7th month, or if you flip it, this would be the 1st month. So then when we get to the 17th of the Heshvan, we have that being mid-fall. And so that's the confusion part. I think a lot of things got flipped that way because I think that's how we got Lent from the 40 days of Teshuvah. So just again, flipping them exactly 6 months. So a lot of things got confused that way. So Halloween is celebrated in the fall, the Day of the Dead, and it's an ancient memory of the flood. And that's how it got flipped, actually. The actual date was in the spring. So this year, for instance, that's November 1st, and it's always give or take, a few days difference because there's a leap week every so often. Sometimes it'll actually be on October 31st. So this year on this calendar, it's on the 2nd of November, which is our mid-fall. But back in the day, it was the 17th, so it was May 4th, exactly 6 months back. So hopefully that helps a little bit. But that's probably where they're getting it. About your discovery of their fornication, referring to fallen angels in the Hebrew, could the same principle point out the Nephilim in Jesus' statement, they were marrying and giving in marriage? I never thought of that before. Yeah, somebody definitely was. Yeah, I'd always thought that was... My thought was, in the days of Noah, they were marrying and giving in marriage until they closed the ark. And of course, that's just what I was taught. The idea that people just go on with their lives. They don't believe the prophecies. They don't try to get right with the Lord. They're just busy. But that's an interesting point. The idea that it could be referring to Nephilim. Yeah, great point. Question, in Daniel, the people that destroyed Jerusalem are of the Roman Empire. Is the people ethnic, cultural, or geographical? I have read the legions responsible were mostly Assyrian, or could the Antichrist be Assyrian? Yeah, when they destroyed it, they used a lot of people that were native to the land. So there was a lot of Assyrian troops and people of the land in general employed by Rome. So Rome destroyed it, but the people that actually did the work were hired out. So that's a good question. And I think depending on the prophecy, it could be any of those, because there are other prophecies we'll get into in the near future talking specifically about that, kind of comparing the Roman Empire, the old Roman Empire, and the revived Roman Empire. So it should be something very similar. Would Ezekiel 28 indicate that Lucifer, Satan, is of the cherub class of being? Yes. And such indicate he has wings, multiple faces, etc. Possibly. In Ezekiel, you have the description of it being the creature being seen. Remember, this is a vision, so it might be symbolic of something rather than seeing an actual person. But it's of a man, a lion, an eagle, and a ox. And later on in the text, you see the same being again, and it says a man, a lion, an eagle, and a cherub. So I'm assuming a cherub face is actually what we would say bull-like in face, the nose and the ears and the horns and stuff. and 3 wings, which means the being that tempted Eve in the garden, because it says it was a seraph, was not Satan directly. Kind of interesting. Somebody from Satan's group. Please pray for those in Jamaica that are in the path of a major hurricane. Yeah, let's do that real quick. Father, we just ask you to limit the damage, limit the life loss in Jamaica. If possible, just have the whole thing skirt to the side so that there's no damage. We thank you and we pray this in Jesus' name. Verse 3 and 4, God spoke light into existence without the sun, yet there was morning and evening in verses 14. He created the sun, moon, and stars into being. Any thoughts on that? It's something that I've wondered about quite a bit, but I really have no comment on. It's something, there's got to be more to it than what I know. But sorry I couldn't answer that question. Larry Olison mentioned that the 120 days left for man, mentioned in Genesis 6:3, refers to the 50 Jubilee years, which are the 6,000 years. Is that possible? It says every Jubilee is 1 year of that prophecy. Kind of, yeah. I think it's a type. We have 120 Jubilees, which is 50-year periods. That's 7,000 years in human history. And then he picked a time for a reason. He could have said in the next 10 minutes, in the next 200 years, but he picked 120 years for a reason. And that's probably to show the types, 120. Not that it's a special number, but to remind people they need to repent before the end of that time period. So I believe so. I recall a writing where Satan was seen standing behind the throne, being rebuked for speaking against the brethren during Yom Teruah. I can't remember where to find that. Yeah, that's in Gad chapter 14. Yeah, an amazing prophecy about a pre-trib rapture. Elohim is plural, and isn't the verb create in the singular? That's an interesting, yeah, that is very, yeah, because the Trinity actually is one thing, if you think about it, even though it's 3 in 1. So yeah, we will create man in our own image. That's a really good insight. Good evening. Last week you mentioned a connection between Halloween and the flood. Where is that recorded? I don't know that it's recorded anywhere except for in Genesis. We'll get to it. I think it's in chapter 8. It says that the flood occurred on the 600th year of the life of Noah, which is the year 1656. And it was on the 17th of Iyar, 17th of the second month. And so that's mid-spring that we were looking at a while ago. And so just the fact that we know the calendars flipped in the Middle Ages, all around 300 or so AD. And so now we have that. If you're going to flip the calendar perfectly, it's going to be mid-fall, which is where we put Halloween at. So that's basically all there is to it. With the second day of creation not being good, be an indication of a pre-Adamic world. Likewise, double blessed on the third day. I don't know for sure. That's a good question. All right.
Hello, everybody. This is Catrice from Cocktail Hour with Catrice, and you're listening to Bullet in Flight Radio, your story, our station, the best progressive Christian network in the world.
Looking for a place where faith breaks boundaries? Welcome to BIFR, Bullet in Flight Radio, an inclusive, progressive community of Christ followers, sharing real stories and bold ideas. This is your radio for hope, growth, and daring faith. Your story, our station. Tune in for new episodes every Friday and join believers who refuse to stay small. Visit https://www.just-dominic.com to listen and become part of the flight.